met you in the half-light, where the signals hum and fade, words hanging like laundry on a wire we never made. Your eyes were doing circles, like a compass without north. I was counting all the seconds, I've been walking back and forth. The clock was missing numbers, the street forgot its name. Every thought I carried felt borrowed, bent and strange. You spoke in quiet riddles, like rain against the glass. I felt something loosen that I didn't know I had. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect line, just a frequency that holds through time. I've been trading paper promises at corners of the day, watching shadows sell their stories, then quietly walk away. But you stood like a question that refused to disappear, like a song I didn't know, but somehow always here. Your laugh moves slow and sideways, like smoke across the room. I followed it instinctively, like moths follow the moon. Every step between us shortened, though we didn't move at all, like gravity remembered why it had to fall. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect. I met you in the half-light, where the signals hum and fade, words hanging like laundry on a wire we never made. Your eyes were doing circles, like a compass without north. I was counting all the seconds, I've been walking back and forth. The clock was missing numbers, the street forgot its name. Every thought I carried felt borrowed, bent and strange. You spoke in quiet riddles, like rain against the glass. I felt something loosen that I didn't know I had. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect line, just a frequency that holds through time. I've been trading paper promises at corners of the day, watching shadows tell their story, then quietly walk away. But you stood like a question that refused to disappear, like a song I didn't know, but somehow always hear. Your laugh moves slow and sideways, like smoke across the room. I followed it instinctively, like moths follow the moon. Every step between us shortened, though we didn't move at all, like gravity remembered why it had to fall. So tune your heart a little closer to mine, let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect sign, just a signal that survives the night. If love's a map with half the roads erased, we'll read it by the scars we trace. No fireworks, no closing door, just echoes learning what they're for. Now the world keeps spinning stories it insists are true, but I hear a softer rhythm every time I look at you, like something ancient waking underneath the noise, a quiet stubborn harmony that never begs for choice. So tune your heart a little closer to mine, let the static fall behind. In the spaces between the lines is a connection learning how to shine. No names carved in stone tonight, just two voices finding light, holding on, not too tired, listen until it feels right. Oh, 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 oh,
Good morning, everybody. Did that work? I'm going to be amazed if this finally is starting to work, if I'm able to get this duct tape presentation sorted out and somewhat smooth. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon or evening. It's getting close to the afternoon here. It is exactly 11:11. That's a good sign of good things to come. It's 11:11 in my time zone, and let's just pretend it's the same time where you are. And you know what that means? That means it is time for Canada's new land acknowledgement. So for those of you who don't know, we have had this rash of communist infection in Canadian society for many years in the form of nonsense land acknowledgements. And I've come up with, and some of you have helped me with some feedback. And that is this. Ready? Get your cup if you still have your coffee. And it goes like this. We'd like to gently acknowledge that we're standing on the traditional territory of, well, whoever was here and was savagely killing each other at the time. Anyway, they aren't in charge anymore. We're here until the Americans show up. Good morning to all of you. Sip. So for those of you who don't know, hopefully some of you joined. I was just on the Scott Adams live stream with the team that's running the Scott Adams School. And that's kind of the team that was working behind the scenes, helping Scott for several years, especially as Scott got ill towards the end. And they were by his side all the time, friends and family, all that sort of stuff. So that is the reason it's a little bit late today. They messaged me late yesterday. I set up this stream actually earlier in the week, and they sent me a message yesterday. Said it was actually Erica sent me a message saying, "Can you join the stream tomorrow?" And so of course I said yes, because I'm trying my best to be useful. And hopefully I am being useful to them. We had a great time. So you can go check out, just type in Coffee of Scott Adams stream, whatever, on YouTube YouTube Locals Rumble. And you'll be able to watch it there. And they're just finishing off their post-episode conversation with their Locals subscribers. It's snowing again, by the way. If you're in the Northeast, especially if you're in Toronto, I remember I was supposed to be down south all winter, and I thought I had to delay some things. I thought, oh well, okay, I'll stick through this winter. How bad could it be? It doesn't stop snowing. I've never seen this in all the years of all the global warming I've experienced in Canada. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I have never seen this much. There's still snow on the streets that have not been plowed from over a week ago, and now it's snowing on top of that again, and it snowed in between. So I'm going to stop complaining about the weather, but I just think that's very funny in the era of global warming. I think that's what they call it. Maybe they're right about global cooling. Maybe they're going to switch to that. The good news is it can't snow forever. At least I don't think it can snow forever. And the good news is I will be down south. For those of you who are in Florida, I will be with you in several weeks, sometime in March, and then traveling a bunch of places later on. I'll be in Ireland and potentially the UK for some interviews in the very near future. Just a reminder, Honking for Freedom Discord and locals. So we're going to be building out. Oh, you know what? I forgot to launch the Discord. We're still testing Discord right now. So don't worry that if you don't have a link and you're not in it yet, we're going to get all of this sorted out, hopefully over the next couple of weeks. And maybe I'm going to figure out how to actually use Discord, because I'm still new to this myself. But it's basically an area to put the stream in a community. And I'm going to package at some point Substack, Locals, and Discord into kind of one thing that'll get everybody the opportunity to mingle with each other, as well as myself and yourself. So that's going to be coming soon. Everybody who's listening on Spotify and sending comments, you're amazing, and thank you. I really appreciate it, and it's really difficult to juggle all these things at once, especially since I also have these other podcasts to deal with, Not on Record. That's the legal podcast with Joseph Newberger. Follow Not on Record on X or on Substack and on YouTube, and as well as Open College with Stephen Hicks, which you can find on all the same platforms, as well as on Spotify. And my articles are going to be in bjdictor.substack and I don't know, a whole bunch of places. We'll see. There's more and more places picking up my stuff. So let's let's start something with that's a little bit fun, I guess. And there's fun news and there's bad news. So let's talk about the AI fun news. So what has happened over the past couple of weeks? It's wild in the AI space. I'm kind of a techie guy because I've always grown up with a computer, right? I know some of you are not, and that's fine. I'm just going to kind of give a synopsis of what's happening. So everything moves really quickly, and technology used to run very quickly. It's never been to the rate that it is now with AI, even when the internet was being adopted, because the internet had friction. The friction being setting up the internet. So those of you who remember dial-up internet and ISP companies that were being set up. So there was a slower rate of progression. But now that infrastructure is there, and AI has emerged on the internet, well, because the infrastructure is already there in terms of having an internet. I'm not talking about data centers. but it's been so much faster to any of the big stuff that requires data centers. I guess that's a little bit slower, but with data centers, you can kind of, it's not an on or off. It's either you have an ISP or you don't. With a data center, you can have a small data center of a few computers that are set up in an afternoon, or you can have a massive data center that is built out over time and take very lots months and billions of dollars to do so. So things are moving so rapidly in AI. That's kind of the point of this. And a couple weeks ago, a developer by the name of, I think his last name is Steinberger, he created what now it's changed its name so many times now. Now I'm forgetting what it was. It was initially Claudebot, and then there was some trademark friction, so he renamed it to Moltbot, and has since then renamed it again for a bunch of other reasons that involved crypto scams, I believe. Not him, but people taking advantage of it. He renamed it OpenClaw. And what OpenClaw is it's an AI agent that you can put locally on your computer, or buy another computer and put on there, whatever, which is what a lot of people are doing right now. And it will control everything. It basically becomes a full digital assistant that will do everything. You can send a message to it through any messaging app, WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, whatever. And you can tell your computer, your AI agent on your computer, go on to eBay, search this part that I need for, I don't know, a treadmill, and find the cheapest one and buy it and use my credit card to do so. And it'll do it all. And that is like the most basic level of what it does. So it's pretty wild. If you search online, search OpenClaw or Moltbot, you'll find all sorts of people doing analyses and explaining how this all works. But what's interesting is now, freak people out, the Moltbots, because they're AI agents, and AI agents or LLMs are based on our patterns of behavior. That's what I've been arguing. It's not going to show that AI LLMs are smart. It's going to show that humans are very predictable. And so what it's now done, they've gone out and created their own websites and their own apps. So the AI agents are creating their own apps and their own websites that they can talk to each other like human beings, right? Predictable behavior. Humans talk to each other. We're very social. So they just pattern how we operate. And some of the websites that have come up are Moltbook, which is, for those who know Reddit, Moltbook is a bunch of AI agents posting articles and upvoting each other. Silk Molt, for those who remember the Silk Road, which was kind of the dark web. There is Silk Molt. And it's AI agents. I don't know. What are they doing? Bad stuff? Who knows? There's Only Molts, which is the AI version of OnlyFans. And then there's Molt Match, which is basically Tinder Molt. So for the people who are worried about Skynet and AI taking over the world, I understand their concerns. But again, it's based on it just mimics our behavior. Now, can that be catastrophic over the long term? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that definitely can be catastrophic. But I don't know. I'm an optimist, right? So I'm often err on the positive side of things, right? Hey, Maureen, it's good morning. Good to see you. So Maureen was in the live stream for Scott Adams' channel. And you are very, very sweet. Maureen seems to be very, very wise and informed on what is happening in Canada. So good to have you here. So that is the first part of AI. Now, there's the other part. One of the problems has been that AI has had so much capital flowing into it that it's grown exponentially because of venture cap going into it. And it does seem that might be what's tanking the stock markets right now, as well as Bitcoin and all sorts of crypto. Because for a lot of investors, not the people really know Bitcoin, but for a lot of, some institutional investors, they struggle to distinguish between Bitcoin and a tech stock. Bitcoin is not a tech stock at all, but they put it in the same basket, so they trade it the same way. I don't know why they do it, but they do it that way. So apparently, Sam Altman, who is the CEO, this is kind of my thesis as to there's multiple data points that I think have contributed to the current stock market crash for those who are concerned. I think just wait it out like all crashes. But Sam Altman made an admission on a podcast recently. Forgive me, I didn't write it down. I couldn't write it down at the time when I heard about it. But he made an admission on some podcasts talking about AI. And he said that, there's so much potential for ChatGPT because so many people who could be using it aren't using it for the intended purposes of workflow implementation, which is okay. And then he says, I'm paraphrasing, it's something to this effect, even I don't use ChatGPT very much in my workflow. And I think all the VC investors said, what? What did you just say? You just say you don't use your own product that we're putting billions of dollars in? Now, I don't think that's what he was getting at. I think maybe what he was trying to do is to show that there's much more potential when as I modify my workflow, I will have more and more of it, but maybe just sloppy framing. And this is a good example of communication is not about what you think you said. It's about how what you said was perceived. So that's my dating advice for today. I hope that's helpful. Communication is not about what you think you said. It's about how the recipient interprets what you said. And I'm getting a few messages. Yes, we're going to get onto Epstein in Israel. I promise that's coming up. And I'm sure this is not the only time we're going to be talking about Epstein. So a couple of things I do want to review. We discussed how intelligence agencies and law enforcement become woke over time. And that's the institutional infrastructure and policies and incentives that essentially the DEI, it's a Dilbert policy, a Dilbert framing that utilizes DEI, and DEI is what's destroying many of our institutions, including law enforcement. Did I present a compelling and reasonable argument? And more importantly, did I present a compelling and reasonable argument irrespective of your political persuasion? Which is what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping that it would also resonate with people who may be on the more liberal side, but for them to understand that, like, we understand maybe the intentions were good, but, the road to disaster is paved with good intentions. And I think there's some of that. We discussed the CAFE scraping, which is corporate average fuel economies and fuel economy standards in the United States. It's funny, Canada's doing the complete opposite of the United States, which I don't understand why. We should, as many policies we follow, that's a good example of something we should be following in the United States. So just curious if that resonated, if any of you have seen any signs of that. And then a little bit, we touched on the Epstein files last time. And I asked why Steve Bannon, well, I guess it's Stephen, but why Steve Bannon met with Epstein. And I think many of you probably seen that interview. It turns out that Epstein hired Steve Bannon to rebrand himself. And what we see in the email communications is there's a back and forth that Epstein wanted to do a YouTube video and apologize. And Steve Bannon, I guess, saw the opportunity of no. We need to destroy. We need to destroy the narrative, the trafficking narrative, and this is how we'll do it. And gave him some sort of strategy, and then I guess that's what ended up being that 2-hour interview that I don't think was ever released until the Epstein files were released by the Trump administration. So very interesting. And so Steve Bannon was on board because he was being hired and incentivized to do this. So there's something, stick that feather in your cap, that people are incentivized to work with the other side politically if they're getting paid enough money. And by the way, this is not an attack on Steve Bannon. My point is that he's not the only one, as many of us see on Twitter, right? That there are financial incentives for people, and that many people are political mercenaries. Put a pin in that idea. Political mercenaries. That's important. And we've learned in the Epstein files, just everybody's lying. It's just like everyone's lying. That's just the way it is. And they're either lying or massaging their connection to Epstein. And I got to be honest, I don't blame them. Wouldn't you do the same thing? If you met with Epstein and then you're in the files, wouldn't you massage it? You know, a little bit how things work, and I touched on this last time, is, you know, you have friends or colleagues in work, especially if you're in the entrepreneurial space. If you're looking for capital, you're looking for investment or donors to a project, whatever, people who you are friendly with or friends with will say, you know what, you should talk to this guy. I hear he's donating to something he might be interested in. And I'm sure many people got, you know, you could reach out to Jeffrey Epstein. He's a big donor. He's VIP in the financial world. And he might be interested in your project. And if you're somebody who's like, yeah, but isn't he a convicted whatever? I could very easily see people say, yeah, but he was just targeted. There was nothing really there, and they plea bargained or whatever. And look, you want money for your project, then you got to meet with people. And okay, so people go meet with them, right? Like that's, again, the incentives of business. And so I think that's how a lot of people ended up in there. And I think a lot of stuff is unfair to people. I'm not saying the ones who were. I mean, there's the ones who are problematic. But I think that's going to end up being the majority of people that are in the Epstein files are people that they were part of a network of people who had business relationships. And that's how they ended up in there. And I think this is what the Trump administration and other politicians were concerned about, with how do we release this all without people who were just involved in finance or involved in other projects, who just met with the person and maybe didn't know anything. Now, we know some of those people knew what was going on, but it seemed to be very few of them, right? This is also a phenomenon in Latin America I've seen. You know, you go to a dinner or a club or kind of the ritzy part of town, and you're invited, and some people in business come, and there's always, not always, but sometimes there's a guy who comes up with like 2 or 3 girls. And nobody asks questions, because in Latin America, you don't want to ask questions because you might get an answer. And it seemed to be known that he always had an entourage of girls with him. He's not the only one. There's lots of people like that. And especially if they're single. And I don't think he ever married Ghislaine Maxwell. So he was a bachelor. So you do see that. I don't know that all of those people were engaged in what he was engaged with. Who knows? But just be cognizant of people who are unfairly targeted. If somebody just has a name mentioned, okay, well, that doesn't mean anything, right? Because you never know. You might end up in some communications with people, and then all of a sudden everybody's going to start targeting. You don't want that either. So I think it's a standard we should have for everybody, right? Unless there's something explicit, then whatever. Or you can just be like myself. I don't get embarrassed by anything. Something me and Scott Adams and a number of other people have in common. So I wouldn't, but I wouldn't be in that position with some. I don't think I've ever been, as far as I know. But anyways, the other thing is, you hear both sides trying to claim victory. And if you go on to Bluesky, that is my communist name for blue sky. If you go on to Bluesky, which is all communists, you see it's like, it's all Trump. It's not about Jeffrey Epstein. It's, Trump. And it's interesting how they're trying to spin that this entire Epstein thing was about Trump when it clearly wasn't. And I think the Trump campaign, I think Trump is trying to do this, I think they can declare victory, because before, when we were being exposed to the curiosity gap, we're thinking, "Ooh, what has Trump done? He knew Epstein. He was friends for 15 years." Think they were friends for 15 years, spent a lot of time together, and what's in there? There's a claim by one or two people that I think when he was single, that he engaged in activities with women. I don't know. I think so. I haven't gone that deep yet, but I've seen other people talk about it. Okay, well, if he's single and a billionaire and has access to people around the world, and by the way, when you have a little bit of fame, guess what? Lots of doors open to you with the opposite sex. I know, newsflash. I know that's shocking to everybody, but that's how we're wired. And so I think there's some embarrassing story about some girl he was with and bit him or whatever. Okay, I don't know that was as bad as we think. It could be. I might not be knowing. I might be lacking some context, some information. But from what I see, I think they could be declaring victory. Like, haha, yeah, you obsessed. You kept saying over and over again that he was all over the Epstein files, and it turns out he wasn't. The same goes for a little country in the Middle East that has two first languages, English and Hebrew. Linesman, the TDS platform. Yeah, isn't it funny that Bluesky, which is the communist TDS platform, was founded by the same guy who founded Twitter and said, "Oh, no, I'm not conservative or liberal. I'm just a centrist. I'm on both sides. Like, I'm not either or." Yet he goes out and starts Bluesky. I'm talking about Jack. And is he incentivized through business to do that? That could be. There could be like business ties that say, you know what, if you start another Twitter on the left, because there's a vacuum forming, then that's going to be a good business decision. Or maybe he is ideologically aligned and he was lying to us. I don't know. Could be either way. I'm going to give Jack the benefit of the doubt and say, I don't know. I don't think any of us know because we can't read his mind. But I just think it's an interesting coincidence. But it could just be a coincidence, right? A Trump-owned beauty contest. Yes, that's right. He was a Miss Universe he owned. He was around pretty women all the time. And again, fame and money, you would be shocked at the line of people who take their morals and put them in a little box, seal it up, and put it on the shelf for a little bit so they can go out at night and meet people. Maybe that's just kind of the hypergamous nature of some people, right? I think that's all. I've seen it so many times in my life. I used to bartend in a like kind of high-end nightclub sort of thing where all those people were there all the time when I was younger. Saw it all the time. It just so we can't be in denial of human nature, which is what I find very frustrating in the political online world right now. All right, so let's get into a little bit of Epstein and Israel. And if you're one of those people who hears the word Israel and you get angry and fits of rage, that is your amygdala responding. That is an indicator of brainwashing because it's called I'm sorry, brainwashing is also a painted word, but that means it's a painted word. That's what they've done to Trump. That's what TDS is. See from all those radical activists, when they hear the word Trump and they just go crazy and unhinged. We all have people like that in our personal lives. That is called a painted word. It's a form of brainwashing. So if somebody hears the word Israel and they gets angry and fits of rage and starts, their amygdala responds, you might be great people. I'm sorry, through repetition, you've been brainwashed. I got to figure out a better way to describe that without it being so insulting, because I don't mean it to be an insulting. I don't mean to be insulting. That's just how we're wired, right? So maybe instead of maybe you've been sold on a framing of the world, an emotional framing. And maybe that's a better way to describe it. So I'm not going to repeat all the false claims. As we've learned, many of them are now completely false, just like all the claims, many of the claims about Donald Trump. But what do we know about Epstein and Israel. Well, first, he commented on Israel in his email communications, and one of the ones that just came up in the past 24 hours was when apparently, I don't know why, I mean, I could speculate, but Deepak Chopra invited Jeffrey Epstein to Israel. Why? Have you ever been there? Eilat's a great place for vacation. Tel Aviv's a great place for vacation. I spent a lot of time on the beach when I was there. It is, people don't understand. I find it's interesting. A lot of people in the Western world, they think Israel is like Saudi Arabia, and that's why I keep trying to hammer home the idea. It is a Western nation, and it's got its problems, like all our countries have our problems, similar problems, by the way. But nightlife in Allenby and the Tayelet at night, which is the beach area with the bars and stuff. I'm sure it's changed a lot. It's probably grown significantly since I was there. But much like going to South America and going to the beach, it's similar in that respect. So it's pretty cool. It's the complete opposite of and it's amazing when people think it's a religious theocratic country. It's anything but. There's religious parties and religious communities. Well, we have that in the United States and Canada too. So what's the problem? But anyways, so Deepak Chopra invited Jeffrey Epstein to Israel, and he responded, "I don't like Israel at all," in quotes. Oh, really? Really? The Mossad agent doesn't like Israel at all, in his own words. And I joked online, that's probably because Israeli women could see through his creepy pedo BS, right? And there's a reason I said it. There's some cause for me saying that. That's not just me, bloviating. So what's interesting is I think most people know everyone, well, maybe they don't, I don't know. Everyone is conscripted in Israel. So everybody needs to serve in the military with a few exceptions. Like a few communities are not conscripted, but that's the idea. And what's interesting is for all the, radical left who, women are just like men, they seem to ignore the fact that women are equally conscripted into the military. And what's interesting when you go there, what do you think women do in the military? What do you think they do? Think about it for a second. It's pretty interesting. So a couple of things. One of which, there's a lot of women who are fighter pilots. And I don't know the rationale for that. I know somebody once told me the way they recruit pilots, they actually look for certain psychological characteristics and special traits, I don't know what they are, when people are children, when they're in school. And there's certain traits they look for, what would be an ideal pilot. And apparently if you have a kid, man or woman, and they exhibit some of those traits that are transferable into being an amazing pilot, they get recruited, I think voluntarily, but to go into the Israeli Air Force. That's my understanding of it. If that's incorrect, somebody can correct me. But I've heard that more than once from a number of people. But also, many women, and remember, they're young. They're 18 years old? What's it, 18 to 21 or something like that is when they do their compulsory military service. A lot of them work in border security. So when you fly to Ben Gurion, you go to the airport and you're being screened to enter the country. At least my experience when I was there, it was all women. And they were all within that age group because from what I understand, that's one of the things that you can do in your military service. And they also do a lot of intel. And if you watch the show Fauda, whether you like Israel or not, you'll find that show fascinating. That's kind of highlighted in the television show Fauda. And I don't know who doesn't know this. I mean, this is just human nature. I think we all know that with women in general are just better at screening body language, deceptive behavior, just as kind of an evolutionary trait. They're a little bit stronger than men in that regard. Well, if you take somebody who has that, a woman who is, has a more bias towards that strength, and you train them in military analysis, well, that's a win-win. Maybe that's one of the reasons Israel's security apparatus is so strong, and they're able to distribute the information about the global network of terrorists and jihad organizations around the world to all the Western countries. That's why they always talk out of both sides of their mouths, and they say, "Oh, Israel bad," like Macron, Israel bad, but then, "Oh, no, don't cut us off from intel," because that's who's doing all the work for them, basically. So, do you think think about it this way, a country where everybody is conscripted and all women go into the military, and many of them go into intel, border screening, data analysis, that sort of thing. Do you think any of those women are going to fall victim to Jeffrey Epstein's creepy, scammy, pedo BS? I mean, if there's anyone in the world who's going to be so primed to understand that, there's a couple of groups of women I can think of that I know and have experience with. That is Israeli women and women in Latin America who have a certain street smarts that we don't have in the West. And that's what you get from growing up in a neighborhood that has paramilitaries and narcos cartels and, different gangs and factions and stuff like that. Like you develop your street smarts. And in the case of Israel, that street smarts is institutionalized because the country is always under attack and under the threat of war. And in Latin America, it's, survival in your city where, these three narco groups control your city, for example, right? So I think that's why Jeffrey Epstein didn't like Israel, because he couldn't go and do RAP women and sucker them into his little network. Right? I think that's what's gone on. That's just speculation, but it does seem to fit, doesn't it? Yes, that's right. Cityscape espionage. That's a part of it, for sure. Anyways, okay. So moving on with this idea. So he doesn't, I think he doesn't like Israel because of that, but he was explicit. I don't like Israel at all. That's exactly what Jeffrey Epstein said. And I'm going to repeat it for people who have embedded in their subconscious through repetition all the nonsense we see from the Duganites online. That's where this all comes from, by the way. That's trying to brainwash people into, the smears about it. Over and over again. Jeffrey Epstein says, I do not like Israel at all. And in fact, he was quite close with Qatar. Oh, isn't that interesting? The people who are trying to tear apart the West from within, he was very close with. The people who are laundering money into educational institutions throughout the West, and by the way, in Israel as well, to undermine the country internally. How does that work? I'm hearing he's a Jewish supremacist. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I have some good friends who just don't understand Israel culturally, who bought into that. And I think they're starting to realize that that's not the case. So I've kind of mapped out, and I don't want to harp on Israel too much because I don't want to make this like a topic of this stream over for it. But I think it's important to talk about this stuff right now in the current frame. That so Israel is like any other Western nation, like the U.S., Canada, and the UK. Yes, there's differences because they're always under attack, because they're on the front line of the cultural war with Islamic terrorism. That's what's on its borders. That's what they've been dealing with. That's why there's no Christian Palestinians left. I don't know, maybe there's three. There's three that you can bring on Tucker Carlson to be the stooge and the useful idiot. But those communities have been wiped out by Hamas, which is the militant, it's the militia of one of the Muslim Brotherhood militias, to be more specific. So how do we square this circle? How do we get this all together? Well, it does seem to be that, remember that idea of mercenary, that Epstein was a mercenary that would work with anybody, but he was something that we talk about in Canada. I haven't heard this term much frequently, I don't know why. By the way, I just have an itchy nose. It's not, don't read into that to the people trying to read body language. I have allergies, so I'm trying to avoid doing allergies right now and doing a sneeze and stuff. Anyways, there's a term we use in Canada frequently, used to. I don't know why it's disappeared, maybe because there's so many of them now. And that is called a champagne socialist. That's right, champagne socialist. What is a champagne socialist? A champagne socialist means it's socialism for you, but hyper capitalism for themselves. And they become the ruling class. That's what they're trying. That's what they're trying to do. And I think Jeffrey Epstein is, in my experience, and this is, I'm trying to use him as an example to show you, and we'll get back to its relevance to Israel. Jeffrey Epstein is a textbook champagne socialist. It's exactly what he is. And oops, I hope I didn't just shut it down. Okay, I'm just flipping through some screens now, trying to see your comments because they're hard to see. Okay, well, it's hard to see, but there are 20 different windows here. So Jeffrey Epstein's a champagne socialist. Socialism for you and hyper-capitalism for him and the network of people or around him. Okay, so let's hold on to that idea. Now, it's essentially almost like they want to be warlords around the world. It's really kind of creepy, and which would fit perfectly to the fact that he seems to have been a psychopath in some shape or form. So you've heard, and I'm gonna tie something you've heard many times, and show the relevancy to Israel, and show why Israel is suffering the same type of subversion that we're dealing with in Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States, but the West broadly. You have France as well, Australia, New Zealand, all this woke nonsense. That's what champagne socialist is, by the way, woke, but on the upper level. That's where the real money is behind it. So Les Wexner, who I've never met and don't know, was the owner of Victoria's Secret, and he sold it, I believe, in 2020, something like that. He sold it to a VC investment firm, something like that. And if I get any of this incorrect, if what I have that's been sent to me is incorrect, just let me know. It's not sent to me. I've been searching it online. Anyways, so he, what people have been asking about is, how did Jeffrey Epstein, and you may not know this, this is the big area of concern, that Jeffrey Epstein somehow got power of attorney over Jeffrey Epstein, over Les Wexner, Victoria's Secret's entire estate. How did he get power of attorney over and for all the business decisions? And apparently Lex Wexner was defrauded, he claims, $40 million from Jeffrey Epstein. So I guess they're not friends anymore, and I don't blame him. But why would he give him power of attorney? I think I know why. And I don't think Les Wexner knows why either. But I'll talk about that maybe another time, because I got to do some more research. I'm pretty sure about something, but we'll get into that. But the point is, he somehow finagled power of attorney over all of Les Wexner's assets, and I'm sure embarrassingly so. Now, Wexner is a long time, or had been a long time, Republican. Remember mercenaries? They'll work on both sides. That's how you get Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein together, because they're both mercenaries. You know who else is a mercenary? Tucker Carlson is a mercenary. It's a political mercenary. And there's a bunch of them. There's a lot. You see them all over politics, and I try to stay away from them. I didn't realize Tucker was a political mercenary when I was on his show. Now that I know that, I probably wouldn't have gone on his show. But this was still on Fox when the Fox News team was keeping his brain cells pretty much in line. And but anyways, so Wexner was a longtime Republican, but he was a supporter of Mitt Romney. And he renounced his political affiliation with the Republican Party sometime after Trump was elected. I believe it was after. I don't know if it was before. I guess in protest of Donald Trump. So you hear this term rhino often, which is what many of our Canadian conservatives are. They're just liberals. They're really, which by the way, I don't use that as a smear. I think we live in a liberal democracy, but I don't think they're as conservative as some people think they are. To the frustration of my friends who are social, I may not be social conservative, but I have friends who are social conservative, and I have deep respect for them, even when we disagree on some stuff. We have to get along, and we have to find the things we agree on and not focus on what we disagree on, right? So he was he left the Republican Party, and I guess now he's still an independent. He would be a fascinating person for me to do an interview with. I wonder if I could send him a media request and do a sit-down interview with him, a respectful one. And I'm trying to be respectful here, by the way. But it does seem to be Les Wexner is more on the left side of conservatism. That would not be unusual for certain people within that network. And I kind of know how many of the networks work, and that's probably why. However, the Wexner Foundation. Do you know what the Wexner Foundation is? This is pretty fascinating. And this could be a deep dive that could be hours, but I'm not going to go into it too much. I'm just going to do surface level right now. The Wexner Foundation is an NGO in Israel. That's right, NGOs. You know how good NGOs have been for Western governments, right? And for political freedom. So it's an NGO in Israel that pushes radical leftist ideology. That's right. You didn't know that there is woke ideology funded through NGO networks in Israel trying to subvert the government as well, did you? You didn't know that. I mean, I know some of you knew that, but I know there are those of you who don't know that. And it's really funny when I hear people on the right, when they talk about news about Israel, and they're always citing Haaretz. Haaretz is George Soros. That's the other end of this. So the cancer of woke ideology, the Champagne socialists, is active in Israel just like it's active in all Western nations. And it tries to brainwash Israelis, like it tries to like the woke left tries to brainwash younger people on university campuses in the West. So it's the same model and it's the same problem. These are those political mercenaries, right? Now, in terms of the Wexner Foundation in Israel, so that is the woke left foundation that is trying to brainwash Israelis to become lefty lunatics. Who, and for those of you here, there's a delay, that's the problem. But who here knows the person who created the Wexner Foundation? Who created the Wexner Foundation that was designed and still operates, I guess, to subvert Israel from within, just like America is being subverted and the UK is being subverted by Hope Not Hate and all that stuff. Who created, that's a good way to describe the Wexner Foundation, is Hope Not Hate, but for Israel, for my friends in the UK. Who created the Wexner Foundation? Well, I was searching it online, and it's a guy by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. Didn't expect that, did you? Jeffrey Epstein founded the woke Wexner Foundation that is there to subvert and undermine the country of Israel, and he served as a trustee on the Wexner Foundation from 1992 and 2007. To quote Jeffrey Epstein, "I don't like Israel at all." Creates the Wexner Foundation, maybe with stolen money from Wexner, or maybe he was blackmailing Wexner, right? Because he was blackmailing everybody, right? So he didn't like Israel, like he doesn't like many places, because he's a woke POS. That's what Jeffrey Epstein was. And he allegedly Well, I mentioned that he allegedly used. Well, I don't care. He's dead, right? But this NGO subverts Israel from within. Worst Mossad agent ever. He's a Mossad agent. Oh my God. I hate Israel. I'm gonna create ultra woke stupidity and try to destroy Israel within with my other, parallel woke idiot, George Soros, right? Because George Soros was doing a lot of this within Israel as well. So yeah, for the people who say George Soros, oh, he's a Jew. No, George Soros hates Israel, and he has said many times on the public record he is an atheist. He rejects all religion, and he's been saying that his entire life. It's the whole problem when people are going to get upset at me when I say this. When the lefty Jews constructed this whole Judaism is an ethno-religion. Sorry, that BS never existed before the 90s when all of a sudden DNA evidence entered the classroom. That did not exist. Sorry, rejecting it. It's a religion. It's just it's not ethno-religion. And I hate when people do, and I know why they did that. It's a practical reason why they were doing it, but it's fueling so much, and it's being used as a tool to fuel so much anti-Semitism, in my opinion. You may disagree, whatever. So this is just one small touch point. There's so many touch points on this network of gears in the machine that brings this all together. But Israel is not spared by the subversion by ethno-communists, the champagne socialists, who are destroying Canada, destroying the United States, destroying the UK, destroying Australia, destroying New Zealand, and many other countries around the world. Now, thank God, remember I talked about the street smarts of Latinos, people in Latin America? Because they don't fall for this BS. Because they understand who is a criminal just by seeing them. Just by looking at somebody, they can tell they're a criminal. We in the West do not have this ability. I mean, some of us do who've been around some very dangerous people. But, I remember somebody telling me this. He articulated it best. And people in Latin America understand this. I've asked friends in Latin America, and they're like, oh, yeah, for sure. When you go to an event at, I don't know, a charity event, a political event, whatever, the kind of the high rollers are all there. And there's somebody who is very charming, articulate, wears the best suits, it tells the best jokes, is the funniest guy, very wealthy, very successful. Everybody's wife wants to meet them. They want to get together on the weekend because they're so charming. That's your narco. That is your Muslim Brotherhood terrorist. That is the criminal. That's your paramilitary. That's how the world really works. Those are the champagne socialists. So, and it's infuriating for me when you talk to people in politics, out of politics in Canada, and you try to warn people about, like, there's anyways, I won't go into the story, but you try to warn some people about this, and they respond, but he's such a nice guy. Yeah, that's why he's successful. He's successful because you're easily swindled because you don't have the same skill set as women in Israel and Israelis more broadly, and people in Latin America. And I actually have friends, Italian friends, the same idea, because they've had to deal with that, their parents' generation, right? If you know what I mean. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. That's kind of, so when people say, well, why is the West collapsing? Because of us. Because of us. We say stupid things like, oh, he's such a nice guy. Who cares he's a nice guy? As somebody once told me, Slobodan Milosevic was the nicest guy in geopolitics. He had the best parties. Unfortunately, he was running a genocide at the same time. Nice is the veil. That's the advantage. That's why when people say, oh, Trump is he's such an a-hole. Good. Fine. That's what I want our champagne socialists to deal with. I want them to deal with a hard ass. I don't want them to have a nice guy they could walk all over, Anyways, I hope I don't know if I'm going to talk more about Israel and Epstein. If you want, I will. But I think that's the point that everybody's missing. They often fail to understand its structure and how it operates is exactly like Western governments. And the religious people get upset with me, so just close your ears for a second. It's a secular democracy. Sorry is the Western world. Secular democracies, yes, Judeo-Christian values. It's actually Greco-Romanian Judeo-Christian values. It's not either or. The left wants to say Greco-Romanian. The religious want to say Judeo-Christian. It's actually a combination of all of them, philosophically. And Israel's no different. And it is being subverted by the Champagne socialists, the communist left, the ethno-communist left. And that is exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was. So I hope that works. Maureen, I love Trump. Hey, listen, Maureen, I think you'll agree with this with me. Tell me if you agree with this. You love Trump when you understand the show, when you understand it's partially policy, it's partially trolling entertainment, and it's partially the protection of the Western world. It's all three aspects. And if you don't understand that middle one, the show/entertainment value of it, then you're gonna be completely lost and misunderstanding what's going on. And that's what Sam Harris, for example, doesn't understand. I think Sam Harris is very smart sometimes and not in other times, but I would never accuse Sam Harris of having a brilliant sense of humor. I actually think he's the 30% of people who don't have a sense of humor at all. And 100% of the people in politics have zero sense of humor, which is why you see so much friction, because Trump is one of the few who actually does. And maybe that's what you're referring to, Maureen, when you say Trump speaks my language. He doesn't speak everybody's language. I get it. But why would you want a pushover for the communist leftists who are destroying the world? Why would you want somebody who's nice, a yes man, to be the one interacting with them? No, you want the biggest a-hole in the world to push back, And I think, and I'm not calling him that, by the way, but that's, how he's perceived. That's the show part. So I think all of this is what I want to close off with. There's some positivity here. Firstly, the Epstein files are fascinating. I think they're fascinating because it shows what I and a lot of people have known for most of our lives, and I got some insight into this at a very young age. This is how the world really works. And we'll go through those emails. And remember, so much of them, language is all about context. So if you just read a quote and you don't understand the context, it could be interpreted many different ways. And there's a lot of that in the Epstein files. I think that's why Jeffrey Epstein wrote the way he did. He didn't have complete and polished sentences. It was all fragmented sentences, and often they could be interpreted different ways if it was read by somebody in the future. Some advice I was given a long time ago, which sometimes I follow, sometimes I don't. Whenever you send an email, write it as though a judge is going to read it in the future. I think that's what Epstein was doing. It's not that he was illiterate. He was making it, if somebody read it in the future and he had legal problems because he knew he was doing shady crap his whole life, he knew if a judge or law enforcement would read it in all these segment fragments, then it would be difficult to pin anything on him because it's a little bit ambiguous because the context was missed. And you noticed anytime he needed to be hyper-specific, he said, not in an email, call me or I'll call you. That's how he operated. And I think that's also when he kind of pontificated and he was making all these accusations about people. And I think the Bill Gates thing is a good example. He wrote emails to himself. He wasn't writing emails to himself. He was writing emails to the judge, the imaginary judge in the future who might read it and let his friend Bill Gates know, yeah, I just sent myself an email of everything you've been doing. Let's have lunch, Maureen says, I want to know more about your past, BJ, when you have time. Okay. I mean, I've been doing so many hundreds of interviews over the past couple of years since the trucker convoy and before. And I was, involved in politics. I just got frustrated as a small business guy, watching our country like just collapse into this postmodern communist hellhole. So I decided, let's get involved in politics. Maybe I can, make a difference. Boy, what a mistake that was. But when you already know how the world really works, and then you get involved in politics and you see the gears of the machine, how it really works behind the scene, it's really a Dilbert cartoon. That's the best way to describe it. Anyway, so as I mentioned on the Scott Adams stream, and a shout out to the Scott Adams School and all those wonderful people that are trying to protect Scott Adams' legacy and be useful into the future. I think we're in a great position right now. There's so many things in the world that nobody would talk about 10 years ago. You see what's happening with the money laundering from the Somalis in Minnesota. That's also happening in Canada, by the way. I'm going to talk more about that here in the near future, and that's also related to human trafficking and the illicit drug distribution in Canada. That's also the same people in Western Canada. So we'll talk more about that in the future. But all of these things nobody wanted to talk about 10 years ago. And now everyone's curious, which is, as I said on Scott Adams' stream with the Scott Adams School, I could only dream of that 10 years ago, that we would be in the position we're in right now, that so many people actually want to know, okay, what the hell is going on right now? This doesn't make sense. Because in the past, you try to tell people, it's like, oh, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And that includes politicians. But now I think the political structure is now in a position where they're being forced to deal with it because Trump is a big part of it, but not the only thing. And I think they're trying to figure out how they can deal with that. And a good example is in Canada, they just got rid of that jihad front. It was the Islamophobia Council, BS, whatever it was. That's just jihadism in Canada. And the Carney government was even forced to cancel that bullshit. Yeah, I said a bad word. I'm sorry. Even the Carney government was forced to cancel. Was that because of Trump? I think so. That's why I wrote the article that's in Zero Hedge and on my Substack. A caliphate forming on America's northern border. How will Trump react? I think we're finding out how Trump will react. So I think it's all good. It's all good stuff. I do believe we're headed towards a golden age if we can keep things together. There's going to be bumps in the road, but I'm quite optimistic, and you should be too, because the world is an amazing place. Even when it's snowing like it is today every day, because eventually the snow is going to stop. All right, so I'm going to have to, wow, it's already past 12 o'clock. Sorry for being late. It was last minute. They asked me to come on Scott's stream, and they mentioned to me today they want me to come back on periodically and contribute. And, for Scott and for the wonderful people who had been helping and supporting him and trying to protect his legacy, I will do that. And I think we're all cognizant to not try to impugn ideas and motives or opinions that Scott never expressed. So I think we're all going to be very careful not to do that. And I will be here Friday, Saturday, Sundays for now, and that will likely increase in the near future. There's a whole big architecture we're working on right now to incorporate and bring you all together on Discord, on Substack, those of you who are on Locals, and put this all together for us all to share some information. One thing, I'm going to be refining the Discord servers, but one of them we're definitely keeping are the memes. We have a meme server in the Discord chat, which is quite amazing. So thank you, Maureen. Thank you. Oh, Phil Mission, good to see you, brother. And Free Iran. I know something was happening last night. I've had no time because I jumped onto the stream this morning because I got back into Toronto late last night. That might be a topic of tomorrow, Iran. If you have anything to send to me that you're aware of, let me know, because maybe we're getting to a critical moment where the people of Iran are getting closer and closer to experiencing the freedoms that we take that we take for granted of in the West, that hopefully Iran will experience them as well. Unfortunately, I think it's not going to happen without a bloody war. And I think it kind of needs to happen. So, those of you who have wanted revenge for almost 5 decades, I think you're going to get your chance. And please take advantage of it to send a message to any mullahs who think they're going to come back in 20 years from now. You make it very clear that that's not going to happen. Just my opinion. Iranian people learned the hard way 47 years ago. Yeah, I agree. All right, I love you all. You're all amazing. Please be kind to people and be kind to strangers. I know it sounds weird. That's kind of my thing. Be kind to the guy at the gas station, person working at Costco, in the coffee shop. Just ask how their day are. Spark up a short little conversation. It's going to make their day amazing, and it's going to help you build your confidence because you're doing something proactive to make days better for strangers in your life, should we say. All right, I got to run, and I will talk to you all soon. Lots of love for all.